curious if you've seen shifts in how you approach learning and training that incorporate more just-in-time learning, knowledge bases, et cetera, that have shifted you from like upfront kind of heavy-duty training to more just-in-time support.
Sure, I can talk over a rather long arc here. So the first large training project I did was a pharmaceutical launch, again, for Pfizer. I walked into a situation where they had about 3,000 people in 6 rooms of, I guess, 2,400 people, 6 rooms of 400 people each, being given 6 hours of lectures. Okay, and that was the standard that multinational pharmaceutical companies did for launch training as of circa 1999. So you already know how far you've moved from there. So let's, but again, it's all episodic. I think that the biggest issue that that we often find in terms of what corporate intentionality is, or what they would like to see, and what needs to happen, is that adult learning is voluntary. It's not mandatory, even if you put a mandatory title on it. So it has to be meaningful to the person taking it, and it has to be meaningful to the person taking it in that they can see the value in the process. And it almost doesn't matter what the modality is, what the vehicle is. I think there's a lot of moving back and forth about what vehicles are, and I think there's, as you can imagine, in anything over time, there are trends and things get popular and then they stop being so popular. But what remains consistent is if you're in school, if you're in primary school in the United States at least, there is a requirement to be there. In the final analysis, they will put you in jail if you don't go to school. Doesn't often happen, but as an adult, that's completely off the table. You choose to learn, you choose to engage. As a person providing learning, you have to keep in mind that what's really critical is that the material you're giving is valuable to the user, and that the learner will be able to take what you're providing for them and take advantage of it in ways that are evident enough to them that you both win. That is to say, you have your larger goal of what you're trying to do, where you're trying to move, and they have their personal goal that what they're doing is not only not a waste of time so that they resent it, but it actually improves their job skill, their life skill, or some of the other material that they have to do. So that's, I think, the recognition of that is a part of what's driving the pull learning, part of what's driving the attention span, because you've moved, people have stopped insisting on, as you mentioned earlier in the report, a top-down approach where some central authority will define for a series of end users what the actual experience they want to have is. But at the same time, a lot of times in my practical experience, I see these tools being used the same way. They're central. They may be small, they may be smaller pieces. They may be shorter pieces, but they don't have the administrative. In order to get a really competent learning management program, in order to have bite-sized information truly relevant to you, you have to have a really strong administrative commitment to tagging and defining and sorting and organizing a substantial amount of information in ways that, in fact, it can be useful in the ways that you rhetorically say you want it to be. And if absent that, you're actually recreating a minor version of, you have a learning path, it's just broken up in very small. And you have a learning path, you can do everything you want. And I'll give one more example of this. I did when Pricewaterhouse became PricewaterhouseCoopers, so PricewaterhouseCoopers, the president of the new company came to my company at the time, not a different company that I was working with then, and they came to me and they said, we've been to the Coca-Cola Museum, and there's a guy there at the Coca-Cola Museum who's done interactive learning. His name is Dana H. Lee, who's unfortunately not with us anymore, but was the pioneer of something he called digital learning. And we want to teach all of our 3,000 senior people, these are high-level managers and partners, how to have an interactive storytelling technique, how to really talk to their customers. Now remember, these are also accountants and consultants. How to talk to their customers in a way that's truly engaging and interactive. and here's Dana, and you work with Dana, and you come up with a meeting, and I'll see you in Singapore in 5 months, and we're going to do this meeting, and we're going to teach our group of 3,000 people how to like turn this into something. So of course, the technology wasn't there. The information wasn't there, and Dana Ageley himself is somebody who had a multi-generational family history. He had huge amounts of visual anecdata back to before the Civil War. He had 3 generations of very interesting people he could rely on, and he could stand in front of a room and sort of sort through any kind of story he wanted. PricewaterhouseCoopers tells, they want to sell people on consulting services, they want to sell people on. So they couldn't make it work, although what we did was we created an interactive plan that actually looked interactive, but it was really very carefully designed learning paths. That said, every 5 or 6 years I meet a senior person from PricewaterhouseCoopers. As recently as last year, I was at a conference with the head of creative services of PricewaterhouseCoopers, who had been there, and he and I had a 40-minute conversation about that same meeting 20 years ago. So it failed, and yet it was one of the most memorable experiences any of those people had. So what can I say?